So we all know the saying that you are the average of the 5 people that you hang out with the most, right? Like we all know that, but how often are we actually making changes so that our circle is one that empowers us and really encourages us to dive deep into stuff that matters and to keep going towards our goals and our dreams, right? I will tell you, when I went into this entrepreneur world, that was something that I kind of just was forced to get into. I was forced to have my circle just not be around me anymore. And I was forced to really evaluate, what do I need in a friend group? And I was lucky to end up calling in a lot of that in my life. And I honestly always say it was a manifestation. But anyways, so I say all of that because on today's episode, I get to bring to you a very, very special guest. She is near and dear to my heart. She is one of my best friends, and she has truly single-handedly been one of the people that has been a massive game changer in my life. She has propelled my growth just through her own and her wisdom and her, her being a wealth of knowledge. Like, because of her, I have really up leveled in so many ways. So to have her on the show is an honor, and I can't wait for y'all to meet her. But yeah, in this conversation, we really get to dive into some areas around like boundaries, or how to keep boundaries, or how to stay truly authentically you and what that even means. We also dive into just where, we see the world going, kind of talking, around some really deep subjects. So it's really juicy. It's really fun. It's really lighthearted, and it's real. More than anything, this is just a real ass conversation, because that's what this platform is about, is just having authentic discussions around topics that matter and will help you think differently to change your life. So enjoy the episode. I can't wait to see what you think about this. And I'm really hoping you enjoy it, because I already know her and I have probably about 6+ more episodes to do together. So enjoy. If there's any topics you want to dive deeper on that you're like, man, you guys just scratched the surface, let us know. We can dive deeper. We'll make an episode about it, because, we're here to enlighten you and bring the collective together in conversations that are just fun and good and deep and meaningful and all the things. So enjoy the episode, and I'll see you there. Hi, my Tiff. How are you?
Amazing. How are you, Jess?
I'm so good. I am really, really excited about this episode, because for anybody that is new or just doesn't know, Tiff is one of my best friends. And so I have all these questions that we're going to go through, but I have a feeling we could also just riff. So it's going to go where it's going to go, but I can't wait for the world to meet this woman. So before we get started, I want you to intro yourself in, but I feel like I can't have you intro yourself in without me just sharing how we met. Because oh my gosh, this woman. So it's so funny when things are just divine, and her and I talk about this all the time. Tiff is one of my friends that we can just go on and on about things, and we're just like, we're just going to let it go where it goes. And like, just the most divine realizations, conversations, happenings kind of just occur. So I'm just so excited for this. But basically, how we met, I will never forget this. I was feeling like I wanted to go on a retreat, or I wanted to do something mindset wise, or I was feeling like I need to come into this new energy, but I hadn't done a ton of work yet, in the sense of like really digging into money mindset and scarcity thinking and all this stuff. And so I was being presented with this opportunity to go on this retreat that this woman, Tiff right here, was hosting. It was going to be life-changing. And yet I said no. I changed my mind. And she happened to throw a contest, and I happened to be, she was like, I'll just enter you in this contest. I was like, all right. And then I freaking win the contest. I go to this retreat. I get gifted this retreat. I can't say no. She ends up becoming one of my best friends. And that was 2 years ago now, or yeah, over 2 years ago now. That was January 2020. Yeah. And to this day, I've been on 5-year retreats or something crazy like that. I can't get enough of you. You're my confidant. You're somebody who I go to for so many things. And so without further ado, please intro yourself. Tell us who you are. Tell us about what you do. Who is Tiffany?
Yes. Hello, Jessie. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. I'm so happy to be here, and just so honored already for all of the future presents that will come in and listen this episode of us just sharing so many divine things. But I am Tiffany Alexandar, for those of you who don't know and who haven't met me yet. And I am your clarity dealer. And I am also the host of Away Unplugged retreat experiences, which are completely off-grid women's retreat experiences. They take place over the course of 3 days. And I immerse you in yoga and meditation and beautiful outdoor experiences. And then new for this year, we actually have a head of nourishment as well. So you have a full designated retreat chef preparing all of your meals. We go to super awesome destinations within the US, and I just love to bring women back on a journey home to themselves. It's what I'm so passionate about. And I'm so elated that this is now the 3rd year of the retreat experiences, and it feels like we're just getting started.
Oh my gosh, this is only just scratching the surface too, because I actually have to share. I wrote a couple words down to describe you, because I was like, you're so eloquent when you talk, and you have so, like, you do so much, and you're such a high achiever, and you create all this amazingness in the world. But I just want the world to just love you and know you, and just to be obsessed with you too. So I literally wrote down, I was like, you hear all this, right? She's so amazing, but you're a fireball. You have this fierce energy, you know yourself, courageous, hungry for life, and you anticipate and create greatness. And I literally wrote down, I was like, she's a warrior. I'm like, this woman's a warrior. So like those, I'm telling you, like, I'm not just trying to like plug your retreats all day. I'm just saying, like, everything you're sharing, it's so much more than that even. And what I love about it too is that I think for me, before I even got into the retreat space with you, I was thinking you had to go, international for these kinds of experiences. Like, I thought that was the only way to really dive in and get a true healing, experience. And you really bring that home, like domestically. Like, you bring us to these really fun locations that, even if I've been there before, like for example, Vegas was the first one. We didn't go on the strip, but I had probably the best time in Vegas I've ever had. And that's coming from somebody who, I like to party, I like to go out, but I got to see it from a different angle. So anyways, we'll dive deeper into this, but I want to get right into it, because you're somebody who we always say we're allergic to surface level, like we go deep. So can you just kind of tell us some of the philosophies that you live by? Because, and I'm sure we'll dive into this too, but you have really come into, like, I like to call it like a metamorphosis. Like, you have emerged into like your true self, even more than when I first met you. So what are some of the mindsets you live by to just stay authentic and like fully embrace this new season that you're in?
Yeah, absolutely. So, oh man, there's so many, but there's also so little. And that brings me pretty much to my first one, which is simplicity. I used to be the queen of overachieving and overdoing and never having a free second in my day, right? And so that past version of me really inspired the version of me now that is a yin and restorative yoga teacher, and teaches meditation, and is now getting into, the modality of breath work, and wanting to teach women specifically how to tap into more of their feminine essence and slow down, so simplicity first and foremost, absolutely, all day long. If things are seeming overcomplicated, you're stressed out, it's most likely because you're making it more complicated than it needs to be. So just honing things back in and bringing yourself back to a place where, how is this the simplest way that I can accomplish this, right? Secondarily to that, and you kind of touched on it a little bit with your remark of the retreats being in the US versus being international. Something else that I operate off of is accessibility. And I do that in a few different ways. So with the retreats, that's making them here in the US versus international. International travel is great. Don't get me wrong. This entire world is beautiful. There's so many amazing places, and you should go see them all. But for women, for them to want to attend these retreat experiences, you are tending to cut out, a very large portion of those that would benefit from the experience by immediately taking them international, right? And they're not great and not amazing, but in terms of most of us who have a 9-to-5 job, we have limited PTO, we're balancing, friend schedules, family schedules, kids schedules. If you're a mom, we don't always have the ability to prioritize an international trip. So bringing accessibility back in through the retreat experiences was super, super key. But then I want to touch on accessibility from another standpoint too. And this actually goes back to the technology aspect of things for me. I have been someone from day one that is so passionate about eliminating your distractions, which also ties back into making things more simple. But by eliminating your distractions, for me in the coaching space, in the leadership space, I've been someone who I've never, had Slack or had these apps, where clients can only reach me there. I've been somebody from day one that from an accessibility standpoint, here's my phone number. And to this day, I honestly prefer phone conversation, DMs, voice messages. Jesse can speak to the voice messages.
Oh, yeah.
I prefer to just be my full self and be available to you through, again, the most simple ways and practices. So we are exchanging phone numbers. If you're in my Instagram DMs, at some point I'm redirecting you to message me on my actual phone number. Email is also a great tool, but I just don't like to create all of these additional steps and processes when they're really not necessary. And I've also been somebody too throughout this entire process. I just want to have real conversations. And then when I say accessibility, I do want to kind of use this to spiral into the next point. That doesn't mean that I'm constantly available to you or to everyone else. Jesse can also vouch for this. I'm available to myself first and foremost, and then I get to decide when I'm available to pour back into you, which I want to do. It lights up my life to help you, get on fire about what you care about and what you want to do next on your path. But I can't be giving all of the time. And that was something that I also learned pretty early on, as that overachiever, perfectionist, never having an extra minute in her day of I've got to hone this back in. And then that's where we get to the beautiful point of boundaries, right? I will preach boundaries all day long. So that's probably a top 3 for me. So we have simplicity, accessibility, and then the implementation of boundaries. And I don't think I even need to dive into boundaries further. I think most of us understand what boundaries are and why they literally exist to benefit us only. But yeah, those are like top 3.
Oh my gosh. Well, there's so much goodness right there that I want to dive into. But I think one thing that I just want people to really take away from everything you said, past obviously everything you shared, was just that one thing I've admired about you and just being your friend is that you are truly the definition of a leader, where you live and breathe the things that you preach, right? Like you are fully what you say is what people are really getting. Like you really live by the things that you value. And I think that's so important for anybody that's just searching for more in their life, or they want to connect with people that inspire them, or they want to follow in the footsteps of somebody who has what they have. Really make sure that you're paying attention to people who are living their authentic truth 24/7. What I love about you too is with the social media aspect, we've talked about it a lot. You really had to weigh where it sits in your life and with your values, and you've come to some really beautiful conclusions. How can I just need to focus on honoring myself. And so even though everybody and their mom is gotta be on social, and I personally, I'm having fun with it, so that I'm on it. But for you, you're doing it in a different way, where you're saying, actually, I intentionally still don't want to be here, or I want to do it my way. And really coming from that place of being so good in your boundaries. And although we won't dive deep into boundaries, we can kind of, move along. I'm just curious, because something that I'm personally diving into in my own journey with, being a business owner and stuff is how do you just get so good at honoring those boundaries? Because I think that is something we all know what boundaries are. It's kind of along the lines of we know what we should do, but doing it is another thing. What do you tell people that are struggling with just really owning the boundaries that they put in place, or they say that they want to put in place? Because that's something I'm you're level expert at it.
Thank you. I receive all of that fully. So I appreciate it. I think the thing that's really coming up for me right now in this moment, I think it will resonate with you and for everybody that's listening and watching this. You can't successfully implement boundaries if you're lacking in personal awareness. So I'll say that again.
Yeah, I was like, please repeat that for the people in the back.
Yes. You cannot effectively implement your boundaries if you're lacking in personal awareness. Okay. So if you are operating on autopilot every day, I don't care if 5 days ago you sat down and you made a list of how you were going to be more respectful of your time for yourself. If you then integrate right back into your autopilot life, those boundaries aren't going to come to fruition for you. They're going to continue to not exist because the implementation of those boundaries require your awareness in more than just the moment that you set them in when you were feeling good and motivated.
Yeah.
You know? You have to wake up every day and consciously remind yourself, even when you know it's easier to just do what you always do because you've always done it, you have to be like, no, I agreed to rewrite my program. I agreed that this boundary was serving me. And I think the other thing here is that so many people start with the mountain instead of just looking to take one step up, right? So people start with a list of like 3, 5, even 10 boundaries, you know, which that's great. You're looking at your life and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that I could change to actually better protect my energy and, you know, who I want to be and how I want to show up, right? But you can't implement 10 boundaries overnight, you know? So it's fine if you need to make a list of 10, but then decide the number one thing that's most important. Maybe 2, depending on your level of awareness, maybe 2. Try that for a week. See how that serves you. See what that does. Don't try to conquer the whole mountain. Okay. It's not meant to be, you know, conquered in one day. And I think that's where everybody kind of gets caught up, or they're like, yeah, I want to have boundaries, but I try it and it doesn't work. So first and foremost, again, you cannot implement boundaries without awareness. It's just not going to happen. And then once you actually do have that awareness, you also are not going to successfully implement your boundaries if you're trying to implement 500 of them. I know I'm exaggerating now, but 1 or 2 max at a time.
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, there's 2 things I wanted to share, add on that. One is that I think it's so important to just remember to give yourself grace in the process too. I know that anytime that I have like really tried to like push and create more, I tend to be really hard on myself. And I know a lot of my clients will say the same thing. They're like, gosh, why am I not perfect, air quotes? Like, why am I not, you know, nailing it right away? It's like, no, you have to do one thing at a time. The first thing, like you're saying, is that awareness. And then the next thing is giving yourself the opportunity to try it on, and then realize it's like a little baby learning to walk. You're gonna probably fall for a sec. Give yourself some kudos for trying. And then the part where you do grow is where you keep going. You push past the awkward parts, right? And then on top of that too, I love what you're saying is like, don't try to conquer the mountain. Realize that the point is not to get to the mountain. The point is to give yourself grace and learn how to climb, right? And just doing a couple pieces at a time and realizing that one thing even that you work on affects the whole, right? And that's one thing, like when I'm chatting with people about like making better choice or making more aligned choices in their career, it's usually career is like the symptom. It's like, but we gotta connect to like something within your confidence or self-love with yourself. And when we connect to that one piece, everything else falls in place. And so I think that's, you know, that's really key to think about regardless of the boundaries you're setting. It's like, let's think about one thing that you feel like you want to work on now, and then go towards it. But yeah, I love everything you just shared on that. It's beautiful and so important. So obviously, like whoever is listening right now, like you can tell, powerhouse, right? Like Tiff is a powerhouse. But I do want to take it back a second, and I want to just understand, if you don't mind sharing, and share whatever you feel comfortable with, but like tell us some of your story. Like who would you say Tiff was before you started coming into this more empowered place within yourself? I'm not saying that you haven't always been empowered. I just mean, what was some of the, maybe a breakthrough that you've had to get to this place you are now, where you're like so authentic, so walking in your purpose and like really knowing yourself?
Yeah. Well, I think there's so many, and I will share that, you know, for anybody that's on a personal development journey, which if you're listening to this, welcome, you're on a personal development journey. If you didn't know that,
welcome,
like, for yourself right
welcome
now.
to it. It's a fun roller coaster ride.
Or you're at least, you know, personal development journey curious, you know, you're on the path or you're curious about getting on the path. And you get to this point where you realize that, and Jesse and I talk about ego all the time. You're going to experience a lot of ego deaths continuously, because your true self of who you really want to be here in the world, so your soul or your spirit, that is always just going to shine through brighter the more and more that you actually do step into, who you are, what your purpose is, which, by the way, you can have multiple purposes throughout your lifetime. Like, don't put yourself in the box of I have to find the one singular purpose. Don't put yourself in any boxes. That's another conversation, but just throw all the boxes away.
Yeah.
So I think start with, I think this is probably the most important, and this does really take it back, but I think it helps understand how I've gotten to where I am now. So just to make everyone aware, I was actually born by, a teen mom, and my mom was only 15 when she had me. My dad was also a teenage dad, and they made, the courageous choice, I think, at that time, to choose to keep me. That was not their initial decision, in full transparency. But what happened as a result of that was I did grow up in an environment naturally where I was empowered by them, I guess is the right word. I didn't have to, but I was empowered by them to figure out a lot of things on my own and to make a lot of choices on my own. And both of my parents were both raised in stricter religious households, obviously had me as teenage parents, so weren't educated on any type of safe sex practices. And they realized, even with them being so young, is that they wanted to liberate myself and my brother to make our own choices. So I do just want to give them some credit. No parents are perfect, and I know they would never claim that. And I won't claim that on their behalf either. But that is one very key thing in my upbringing I know has empowered me to face an obstacle and to overcome it, because my parents were always very transparent about their story, about how hard it was to actually choose me, choose my brother, to raise us, and to also, they're growing up alongside us, but they still did a great job at empowering us to make our own choices. What this did, however, is it made me an overachiever, because what I started doing was comparing myself to what successful people in society were doing. And that does take us back to the boxes conversation of, you're getting the best grades possible, you're participating in all the extracurriculars, you're trying to get into a good college, you need to know exactly what you're going to do for the rest of your life, so you can go to college, get the degree, get the job, pay off the student loans.
Exhausted.
You've got to find your soulmate in there, maybe have a few kids, buy the house, get the dog, maybe a cat, all of these things. And so I decided that I was just going to over excel in every single one of those areas. And boy, did I. And by the time I hit 27, which for some people that's late, for other people that's still really early, all of those boxes were checked for me. I had an undergrad degree. I had a graduate degree. I worked full time the entire time I put myself through school, which I will say for my parents too, I put myself through school. That wasn't something my parents did for me. Again, it was my choice. And I made the choice. I wanted to be like everybody else at that time. And I wanted to get the education and the degrees. And I got married. I was with a partner actually for almost 12 years, and that relationship has now ceased. But it led me to a place of the career that I went to school for, I wasn't happy within, which is how I faced that roadblock and I catapulted myself into the fitness industry. And then B, within all of that, there was a huge relocation that happened. So I'm from a very small town in Pennsylvania. I grew up on 70 acres of farmland, and I moved to Seattle. And
which is where we met.
Which is where Jesse and I met.
Yeah.
And that is quite quite the contrast. And a key thing that happened while I was in Seattle is that I had left this successful fitness career that I had managed to build for myself in Pennsylvania, which, you know, again, didn't go to school for fitness, but figured out how to do the personal trainer stuff, and, you know, get myself on board for that. But within 3 months of moving to Seattle and not knowing a single soul, I had basically replicated my life that I had in Pennsylvania, which I loved and adored and was very sad to leave behind. And it was at that moment that I realized how powerful I was. And I don't think I had ever fully realized that before. Ended up meeting some really great mentors, was exposed to entrepreneurship, and was exposed to the idea of, hey, you know, you've always been helping make other businesses successful, because even in my career prior to fitness, that's what I was always doing. Haven't you ever thought about just, you know, running a business successfully on your own? And it kind of seemed like an illusionary thing that wasn't super attainable. Like, again, my parents being teen parents, they certainly, even though they empowered me to make my own choices, they weren't like, go be an entrepreneur and run your own business. You know, that was kind of off the table, and not something I was familiar with at all. So again, I looked at the obstacle, I felt it out, it felt really right to me, and I empowered myself to make that decision to get educated. And when Jessie and I met, when she came to my first retreat, you know, to get to this point in time, I decided to leave fitness entirely for yoga and for the retreat business. So at the same time that I launched the retreat business, was certified in yoga, doing all of that, I also let go of my, you know, last fitness client that I was then coaching online. And I did all of that in the first 3 months of 2020. So basically, you know, arose into something new and dissolved something else that just a few years prior, I had worked so hard to overcome obstacles just to get there. So the key in all of this has been the idea of follow your direction and your path right now, but also learn to practice non-attachment to whatever it is that you're currently loving, because for as long as you are on your path of what you're supposed to be doing, which hopefully you're there or you're getting there, you're always going to be shown things that show you the next best thing or great thing that you're ready to pour yourself into, because you are up leveling every single time. You have something different to deliver to people every single time. So I can honestly say at this point in time, if I was still fitness coaching, I would be doing a disgrace to everyone that knows me, because I had tapped out. I had exceeded, you know, my greatest potential there. I helped a lot of people in that regard, but I really desired to get into the mind and the spirit. And that's what I've done. And that's where Jessie and I are at and where things have evolved. And I've shedded many things, like my marriage that I mentioned. And that was out of necessity of growing into different people, wanting different things from life. I'll mention one last thing and I'll wrap this up because I know this is a lot.
Oh, I love this. I'm like, riff, go on.
I, you know, have also been able to come into my own decision more recently in the last few years of, I am not destined to, you know, be a mother of a biological child, you know, in this timeline. And that was really hard for the prior version of me that was checking all those boxes. That was really hard for me, even though I knew it was my truth, that I wasn't supposed to be doing that in this lifetime. It was something that I had to work through, and I've shed a lot of tears. Jessie has seen some of those tears over the course of our friendship, of really wanting to reject that true, authentic piece of myself in exchange for just fitting into the box that society wants me to fit in and just belong like everybody else. But I've come into the fact as well that, again, that feels like an obstacle, but it's not an obstacle. It's actually my superpower. And when I've started to open up about it, like many other things, I have women that connect with me that have felt that way too. And I can be a pillar of support in that arena, which I was never really intending to do, but I'm so happy to be there as that. And, you know, I will just share openly too. I take action. So when I make decisions on something, I'm an action taker. I don't sit, you know, in the void for very long and debate of, you know, what I can do. And I'm getting my tubes tied this year. There will be a party, you know, everybody has baby showers and everything else like that. And that's great. And I'm so happy for them and I honor that decision for them. But I'm going to have a party that's celebrating the fact that I will never reproduce a biological figment of me or reproduction of me in any sense. And for me to be able to say that I'm going to celebrate that is a true achievement and testimony to the work that's being done to overcome all of that inner rejection and outer rejection. And that's for any decision in life. But again, that's just a bigger one of mine that I have to share at this time.
Oh my gosh. Well, see, this is one of the reasons why I just love you so much, is because, again, like, authenticity, like, flows out your pores. Like, this is just who you are. And like, you come so into your truth, and it's like, unapologetically, this is it. You know, this is me. And yes, it takes time to like really, you know, feel like, okay, I can share that with the world, right? Like, I know you it's taking you a minute to like share that, because your intention is you never want to hurt people or make anybody who does want to be a mom, like for that example, you don't want to bring people down. That's not your intention. But I think it is important to bring a voice to the people who just, it's just like anybody who feels like they like or they feel connected to something that's not the status quo. You know, they're just like, well, I don't know why, but this is just my truth. And whatever that truth is for anybody that's listening or anybody in life, it's like, the more you just own that and step powerfully into that is the moment that you're free. You know, and so, and I think also what I want to touch on too, is you've said a couple things here that I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to dive in. You were talking about like this idea of attachment. And for a long time, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand the concept. Like, I heard the words and I like pictured somebody like clasping, and I was like, hey, I get like connecting, but how do you detach and like, but still care? And I didn't understand that. But I think what two things. One thing that you've said is like, you don't sit in the void for very long, right? Like you feel inspired and then you act. And that's why you've accomplished so much, right? And I'm like almost exhausted hearing all the things you've done. I'm like, oh, everybody take a breath. But I just think about that and it's like, okay, well, being able to just move, what you're doing is you're saying, okay, I'm following my inspiration, which is my intuition, which is my soul. I'm connecting with what feels good in this moment and I'm moving towards it. I'm not giving myself the opportunity to dive really too much into the worrying, the stressing, the overthinking, the protecting of this thing. I'm just like, you know what? Or you're like, you know what, this feels good. I'm just going to move towards it. And then I think that helps detach. But I also think coming into this feeling of like, what was I going to say? I had it. It was feeling the sense where, gosh, I had it and then I went on. What did I do? Dang it. This, it'll come to me, I swear. But this, you know, this idea of feeling like, oh, what I know what I was going to say is I think when we're attached to things, it's because we've allowed our identity to be so wrapped up in something that's outside of ourselves. But I think the moment you start doing more and more of this work where you come into who you are and you start knowing yourself, like you with your deep authenticity, and you know, I'm coming into that too. When you start to know yourself, that's the compass. That's where you come into, and then everything else, you're able to just not stress it so much. You do it because it feels good, but the moment it doesn't, you're like, okay, I'll pivot. And that was honestly, I think about like when I first started, you know, being an entrepreneur. I started an interior design business virtually in a pandemic, I might add. So that was wild and it was successful. But if I had been so attached to this idea of needing to have this business, like that was like that version of my business, that was a baby, you know, it was like treating it like my baby, like I wouldn't have been able to pivot because I would have wrapped my identity so much in being that interior design girl versus focusing on the bigger point, the bigger why, the compelling why is I just want to change lives. And the way of doing it in this modality with design doesn't feel like the way I want to do it anymore. And so I was like, well, what do I want to do? And I was like, I want to scrap all the design stuff. I just want to have the conversations. I was like, I just want to do the consults. I was like, I think I need to just switch my business to that. And so I started going down this path that I was always meant to do anyways. But anyways, so I say that because for anybody that's listening that, you know, is in their personal development journey and is struggling with that component, which I think we've touched on a lot, is like having attachment to things is literally like being able to detach is like a secret to living a free life. It's all about the attachments and detachments that we have. Really understanding that concept is so important yeah, being able to connect with your authenticity. So thank you for diving into all of that, for being so real and just honoring yourself through sharing your truth and your voice. And I want more people to follow in your footsteps in that way and do that for themselves too. So kind of skipping topics a little bit, but I'm just, I would just love to know, like, as you've come into this, evolution within yourself, and you just, I just love who you are so much. What do you wish people knew about life and the world and this human experience? Like, I know that's a big topic, and we'll probably have more podcast episodes where we really dive into this stuff, because I want to go into ego death, all these things with you in future episodes. But what do you wish people knew about life, to maybe just feel more relaxed about the process and the journey?
Yeah. So this actually was just coming up for me at the kind of segment of, ending our last topic. And I think it's a perfect thing because it goes back to the beginning of when you asked, what my values are. And I said simplicity. And I feel like this share specifically is so simple and it makes so much sense. And I feel like for many of you who are living in this place of over analyzing everything, hopefully it will take you, give you the permission slip of like, oh, I can stop doing that. I can just lean in and tune in. So at Away Unplugged, we throw away the phones, the distractions, all the things. It's all about you and that journey home to yourself over the course of 3 days. And what happens during that time when you don't have any of those distractions, you don't have anybody knocking at your door that you feel like you need to answer, is you actually have the ability to listen to your gut, to your heart, and to your intuition. And you'll notice what I didn't mention there was your mind. Okay. Your mind is here to guide you and to keep you safe. And your mind is BFFs with your ego. Okay.
You're right.
So if you are in the state of overanalyzing and stressing and worrying, that's an indicator that you are prioritizing that relationship between ego and mind. And so you then have to look at, well, what about my gut? What about my heart? What about my intuition, which has this super interconnected relationship with self or soul or spirit? And in terms of energy, I know I said this is going to be simple. I promise this is simple. In terms of energy, everything has a frequency. And I'll just name drop Dr. Joe Dispenza. Please just...
I'll name drop him all day. His stuff is incredible.
Google Dr. Joe Dispenza, pick a book, any book, and just get started. But our bodies emit frequencies, right? And so when it's very trendy to say like, oh, I love your vibe, or oh, that's not my vibe. And I think we forget it. What we're really saying is this energy is really attractive to me, or this energy feels really yucky to me. That's what we're really saying when we're talking about vibes, right? And it's what somebody is emitting, what we're receiving, and back and forth. And so each of our organs, and we won't get into the full chakra system, but each of our organs actually emits different levels of frequencies. And our gut and our heart emit a bigger frequency than our mind. And so whenever we're in the state of overanalyzing, if we can just calm that down and shut it down, and we can truly tune in, and especially as women, because we are naturally more nurturing, that feminine energy in itself versus masculine energy, which we have too. Feminine and masculine energies, just to clarify for everyone listening, have nothing to do with gender. They're literally just different energy types. But being a female, you typically do have more feminine energy, or you want to live more in a feminine energy, and then vice versa for the male. So with us having more feminine energy, that is your soft, that is your slow, that is your quiet, your calm. That energy is what allows us to tap in more to that frequency of our gut and our heart, which in reality is usually yelling at us louder than our mind. But because our mind has such a strong connection and relationship with ego, we're always giving that all the power. And so our heart and our brain often knows what's next for us and knows what decision we need to make before our logical mind will surrender to it. And so I think that's the biggest practice in this, is if you want to quantum leap yourself and project yourself forward quicker, but to do it in the right way or the most aligned way, it really is. It's the heart, it's the gut. That is going to be your most reliant messenger system within your body over your mind any day. And then your intuition as well. The mind does still have a slightly higher frequency than the intuition, but do keep in mind that if you allow it, the intuition will work with the mind. You just have to establish that relationship.
Oh my gosh. It's so interesting too that you're pointing to your head, because for me, I feel like my intuition speaks in my gut. Like I get a lot of stuff kind of nudging me there. So I think it's just knowing like where you, because I think all of us, like throughout our entire body, it's our intuition, you know, so you just have to find where it speaks to you the loudest. But it had me just wanting to dive so much deeper into the subject of like how like so many people, like I know for myself, when I was really not in my like alignment with myself, my body was speaking really loudly. And what did I do? Instead of going inward, like my body was screaming at me to do, I went to every doctor, every specialist. I got so many different scans. And it turns out I'm one of the healthiest freaking people apparently ever, because nothing was wrong. Nothing was wrong with me. But when I did everything that after going to all the tests and all the doctors and all the things, all I had left to do was just go inward. Because I was like, I finally surrendered. And I don't think you have to go through like an intense process to get to that surrendering. I think if you can just surrender, you can receive, you know, what you need to receive. But I do think sometimes it takes like that loud noise before people are willing to, and before they can connect with it in the way that's going to actually speak to them loud enough for them to really process and hear. But yeah, that's just so interesting. Like the mind body connection, and the fact that, what you say, the heart and the gut speaks louder to you than your brain.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder why. Like I know neither of us are scientists or doctors, but I'm just curious, why are those maybe bigger meridians?
Yeah, so if you think about the pathways, you know, within the body, so the brain has all the neuro pathways, and I know, you know, plasticity is really kind of trendy right now and picking up, and I'm so glad that people are understanding that. But at the end of the day, you know, based on those frequencies as well, just to throw another kind of statistic out there, we can only change about 20% of our life through our mind alone. And that's saying that we have tapped into the power of neuroplasticity and rewiring in that way. The rest of our change, the other 80%, comes through the body. It's through the body. It's because, you know, our tissue, our fascia, everything in here also holds memory. And the quickest way, you know, to typically help people understand that is to think about, you know, stories from organ transplant patients, and how they will adapt qualities of the person that they received an organ transplant from. And in some cases, they will have memories. You know, their palates change, they smell things differently. And we just disregard, you know, from here down, we disregard that this part of us is also recording our lives. We know that the body, you know, there's another book, The Body Keeps the Score. It holds so much trauma. And to that point, if we can release that trauma, guess what we can put into our body? We can put pleasantries into our bodies, things that feel good into our bodies. And that's the reprogramming that I feel like isn't quite entering mainstream in the personal development yet, is how much of the work actually is done through the physical body itself versus just all up here in the mind. And you think too, and I know you asked why that was, and again, I'm not a scientist, you're not a scientist, I'm not an MD, you're not an MD, but there is, if you think about everything that's going on, you know, with tissues, with neurons, with our nervous system, if you think about how much is actually going on interconnectedness here versus just our brain, there's so much more to be done and to be changed within the body than in the mind alone.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. I've actually had like 3 different conversations this week about how we're not just a floating head, we're really, you know, a body too. And so it's just really emphasizing to me that anytime we're stuck in our head, or we feel frustrated, or we're overwhelmed, or we're feeling undesirable emotions, that is our key to just bring your body into the process. Get out of your head and get into your body, whether that means like literally doing like shaking your body to like let out stuck emotions, dancing, going on a walk, connecting with the earth outside, just stepping away from mindful activities for a second, asking how your body feels, doing a body scan, whatever it is, connecting with the body. And that's always going to lead you in the right place and help you change your state. So I think this is so powerful. And I love that we went here because this just seems to be the theme of the week.
Yes, I love it. Everything is, it's coming full circle. It's what's supposed to be chatted about.
Yeah, I love that. And do you think this is why, because I remember you're like going on your retreats, like the very first one was I think the most impactful because it was immersing myself in a new experience that I hadn't done before, which was no technology at all. And I remember that experience, like not being able to click in or realizing how many times I do go to search for my phone, or even if I'm not going to do anything with it, I just like to turn it on and look through it really quick, even though I just did that 10 seconds ago. It's these weird habits that I was like, whoa, I have these muscle spasms, these isms connected to this thing, And so I think being able to go into this immersive experience, get my body involved in the process, remove technology for a second, it actually did allow all of us to become closer. And that's why it was such a transformative experience, is because we were in our body, we were tuned in a different way. And until this day, all of us are still like besties, we've got like, go shout them out. We've got like a group of like, what is it, 5 or 6 of us that are like core for, over 2 years now. So
yeah,
there's so much you think about, like, if you want to enhance your life, if you want to change your life, I really want people to think about, what are my habits? How am I maybe disregarding my body and my truth and my soul and my essence as I'm moving about my world? Bringing in that we were talking about earlier, that slow down, really connecting with like, giving yourself space for the growth to catch up with you, right? Just like pausing for a minute is so powerful. So I'm curious, just because since I don't know, I know that we can go here, and I know this is really random, but I think because I've seen you just evolve, like in the last 2.5 years I've known you, like you have evolved at this like rapid pace, and I feel like through the work that you do and the work you're coming to, you're seeing so much, just like differences in people and growth and whatever. And I'm curious, where do you think like the world is evolving to right now? I know that's a really general question, so take it how you want. But because I want people to feel a sense of hope, because all this work, all this stuff, it can feel heavy, and it can feel heavy in our bodies. It can feel heavy in all the goals we're striving for. And we're just trying to be, as best we can. Where do you think the world is going to with like this energy kind of shaking up that I feel is occurring with all of this?
Yeah. I love this question. This actually, it's kind of a sneak peek at a segue that I'm going to be doing on Tiff's 2 Cent Tuesdays. That's been on my heart. So I'll share here first. I truly believe that as a whole, the individual consciousness is awakening, right? And so that comes back to earlier, we were talking about, you can't set boundaries successfully if you're not, aware. And awareness does also mean consciousness. It means that you're awake to your life, so to speak, versus being on autopilot. And what I want to touch on here, and what I've recently just received some insight on, is there is all of this individualism behind this consciousness and this awakening that's occurring, and everybody's having it in their own regard, in their own right, because we're all unique and no two of us are the same. We may have things in common all day, but I will stress this again, you are a unique human being. There is no one else on this planet that is you. And if no one has told you that that's your superpower, allow me to be that person to say that to you today. It is your superpower. Be you. Stop trying to be like everyone else. And again, throw out the freaking boxes. I almost swore there, but I'll keep it PG.
Oh, who cares? I cuss all the fucking time on this thing.
All right,
whatever.
perfect.
We're real up in here.
So what has really come into me is that, unfortunately, there is some negative energy that's being targeted towards this, individual awakening and this consciousness, saying that, we're not meant to operate as individuals. And, there's a lot of people that feel it's selfish to prioritize themselves, right? That's a big hot topic, especially when you're starting your journey. And to that, I have this to say, is that in order for us to operate and be a collective, which I do think we are, this world is here as a community and a collective and a shared experience. In order for us to successfully co-create, we need to be able to individually consciously create as well. If we have a bunch of unconscious people in the world, not self-aware, they are still contributing to some type of collective communal energy without even choosing to be a conscious part of it. So we do need to promote and to be excited about the individual awakenings and consciousness that are being achieved, because it's through this type of awakening that we actually shape and co-create the world that we all want to live in. And for so long, so many of us have just been going along with whatever is, and we're finally starting to see a rebellion against that, I feel, on a larger scale. And it makes me really excited. Is there a lot of growing pains with that? Yes, absolutely. But at the end of the day, the trajectory towards consciousness is a trajectory towards light and love. And who doesn't want more of that in the world? So if we have, as individuals, can recognize that within ourselves, then we can share it with one another. And I'm pretty convinced that only beautiful things come from that. So that's my take.
Oh my gosh. I don't know, I just felt like my heart open up or something when you're talking about that, because that's just so peaceful and just hopeful. That makes me feel like we're in this weird, like you said, growing pain, but really heading in a beautiful direction. And it's funny when I think about this podcast, like I remember when I started this, like I was like, I just feel that my soul wants me to just create this thing. And it started out with, it was called Goddess Sessions. And I was like, okay, I don't even know what, like the word goddess has just been following me forever. I was like, of course I got to put this in here. And then one day, as I felt the need for expansion of the container and like putting it out more on the podcast and the Facebook group and doing more continuous sessions with other women and getting other voices heard, the word collective just came to me. And I was like, I like that. And I liked the vibration of the word, but it's funny because I didn't even fully know, like, really, I don't think I really understood what it meant. I think it's been evolving, but I love just like that this is not the first time that I've heard that we're moving into more of like a collect, like the collective is kind of rising together and we're kind of coming into that space. And yes, it might be wonky, but we're moving in that direction. And so it just, I don't know, it just made me think about how like I've kind of just accidentally in a way done that with this podcast too. And so I just love, I love all of that. I think it's amazing. And I think you're amazing. And you're so enlightened. And so I'm so excited. And it's funny, it made me think too, like, so I want to talk really quick. This is so random, but about tattoos, because I think your story is so cool. So for anybody watching, I have a tattoo here. I have another one here too, but I have one here. And the one on my arm is called a unilome. And it is this symbol for, it means journey to enlightenment. And when I first got it, I was like, oh, I really love that. I just think it's beautiful. Then I found out it was a super popular tattoo, but I was like, no, but I love this. Like, this is my tattoo. And I got it. And it's funny because over the last like 5 years I've had it, which has been really since the birth of this entire really deep dive personal development journey for myself. It's really evolved and I'm really, really understanding that meaning more than when I got it. So kind of similar even to the podcast, but so I just love the idea of like things evolving as they're meant to. But can you tell us, since we're here, a little bit about your tattoo story? Because I love it and I love the meaning of it. And it's so you. And I just feel like we would not really get to know Tiff if we didn't know like this side of you too.
Yeah. So if you guys are listening, and I suppose if you're watching, this is the last time I will have a bare left forearm. 2020, September of 2020, I'm going to share my earth age with you all. I turned the blissful age of 30. And for my 30th birthday, I decided to take myself on a journey, which going into it, I was calling a retreat. And coming out of it, I have refused to call it that, and I refer to it now as a course. But you may or may not be familiar, but the traditional Buddhist practice of meditation is actually referred to as Vipassana. And there are Vipassana centers all across the world, literally in every single country. And typically, to get started as a student of Vipassana and to learn the traditional Buddhist teachings, is 10 days of immersion. And it's 10 days of immersion of not only, you know, a tech-free environment, but it's also, you know, completely vegetarian. So you're doing no harm to no other living thing while you're there. There's a huge moral code with Buddhism. You can look that up on your own time. But it's also completely silent. So it's a 10-day personally immersive silent meditation course. You meditate all day long, and at least 3 of your sessions during the day, which are 60 to 90 minutes, at least 3 of those sessions are sittings of strong determination, which means that you're not permitted to move during your meditation. So if you're seated, you know, in your cross-legged meditation seat, we can all picture this, right? You're not permitted to move. If you have a scratch, if you have a pain, anything, you're directed to come back into your body to observe the sensations and just to release and let go and stay exactly as you are with what is, how it is in that moment. And so within these teachings in these 10 days, you learn a variety of, you know, traditional, ancient, I guess at this point, Buddhist Pali terminology. And one of those terms really impacted me during my time there. And this was, you know, turning 30, I was shedding a lot. You know, I'll be shedding for the rest of my life, even when I think I have nothing left to shed, let's be honest. But I was really shedding a lot. I was shedding those boxes. We'll just go back to that reference. So all those things I had accumulated and was so proud of, I was shedding them, and I was in resistance to shedding them. And you sit with yourself for 10 days in silence, and you kind of can't lie to yourself when you leave that experience. It's really hard to leave and look yourself in the mirror and try to put all those layers back on that just asked to leave. And it's also not fair. And I don't recommend trying, because you're going to cause yourself a lot of pain and suffering. But the word that stood out to me was the word anicca. And it's spelled Annica. And that word means impermanence, which essentially alludes to the fact that everything is always changing and nothing lasts. So to me, that is a core existential truth of this life and this existence that I have here on planet Earth, in this rolling marble in our huge solar system that we still only know this much about. It's just a constant reminder as well for me to get back more into my feeling body and to let go of things that are stressing or causing worry, or that I'm maybe wanting to attach myself to, because the real lesson in the term anicca, impermanence, everything changes, nothing lasts, is the joy is in our moment right now. And we can't experience the joy in our moment right now if we're always attaching to things and we're always waiting for the next thing, or we're always living in the past. We're always robbing ourselves of our joy and our happiness right here, right now. And we can free ourselves of that if we live by, I'm going to call it a law, but the law of impermanence, because it is, like I said, to me, it is the only thing I have found so far to be existential truth. So I'm getting that tattooed on my arm, and it will be very illustrative. I won't give away those details, but follow me on social media, DM me, and I'll just give you my phone number and we'll chat. But yeah, it's going to be beautiful. I'm really excited.
Oh my gosh. See, so intentional. Everything is so intentional. Even behind you, it's like your name and then who you are choosing to be. You know, I think it's beautiful. And so that was magnificent. And the reason I wanted to come to that, because I wanted to ask you that, is because it's such a beautiful way of being and thinking about life. And I knew it was going to bring us full circle into really like these key words of wisdom that I think, regardless of if you want to hear advice from other people or whatever, like, know those words for yourself, the words of impermanence, and just being fully present. Like, I think if you just choose to live in that space, you can't go wrong. You know, so thank you for sharing that and all of your energy and being with us today. And just, oh my gosh, I'm just honored. You're just a wealth of knowledge, and just, it was a pleasure. So unless there's anything else you want to share, any last words of wisdom or thoughts or anything you want to just bring to the surface right now, please feel free before I ask my last question.
Yeah. So first and foremost, Jessie, my beautiful and dearest just friend and goddess that you are, and just putting so much of your love and light in the world. Thank you for having me. Very confident this won't be the last time. So hopefully everybody loves this, and Jessie and I will continue to co-create some future things, down the road.
Yeah.
We want to pour into you. We want to give you guys literally everything to empower yourselves. So if you're in either of our circles, please stay in them. Stay with us. Let us be, your helpers here. But the thing that's calling me right now to share, to end this, is Jessie and I both sit here in front of you, with stories and with lessons, and we don't sit here in perfection. So I do want to put that out there, because I know that you can look at individuals that are where maybe you want to go, or at places that you're thinking about exploring. And I just want you to know that there is no point that you reach where you're like, I've made it, or I'm perfect now, everything's wonderful. Life has contrast to it. So even with the lessons and the reminders of, existential truths like Anika, the idea of perfection doesn't exist. Failure is all that there is. You're gonna fail. And guess what? If you're failing, that means that you're taking action, and you're trying. So keep doing it. Like for me, if you're failing, you're doing the right things. You're on the path that you need to be. So I just ask that you please don't look at Jessie and I in a state of perfection. We are our own works in progress, always 24/7. And we're here to help you, on your own path there as well. So that's just my closing message that I felt I needed to give.
Boom, mic drop. I love that. And if I could add anything to that too, because that's, so good. So good. And yes, absolutely. I love everything you're saying. Something that I actually had to do was I really had to grieve that there is no, like, you're never done. There's this grieving of almost like you can never fully get where you want to go, because it's always evolving, it's always changing. And that's not the point, because the moment you get to where you want to go, it's done. So you really don't actually do you really want to get to the end? Like, I don't know. So yes, I personally had to come into this grieving with that. But once you really tap in and you're like, no, that's truth. Like, then it's almost like the pressure of trying to be perfect, or pressure of trying to get done, it just kind of goes off, and you're like, okay, well, how can I make this more fun? How can I enjoy this more? And then you ask, I think, better questions. So thank you, my love, for being on today. It's such a pleasure. You're just amazing. Where can people connect with you? I know you're in real life is like your thing, but I know that obviously there's ways people can connect with you. So I don't necessarily want to put your phone number down here, but where can we connect with you? That would be the easiest before they go, off the grid with you in your retreats.
Yes, absolutely. So I will, first and foremost, I will shout out, Facebook and Instagram. I know pretty much everyone at this point in time does have at least one of those two platforms, and, you like to connect with people that you want to follow on there. So I will share those with you. So you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. On Facebook, you can find me under Tiffany Alexandar. That's my personal profile. And then you can also find me at the business page, which is just Away Unplugged. And then on Instagram, you can find also the business at Away Unplugged. And then you can find me personally by searching Your Clarity Dealer. And it's brand new. It just launched the other day. But myself and my head of nourishment, her name is Dina, by the way, we are going to be active on Pinterest moving forward, and that handle is also Away Unplugged. So feel free to find us there. Would love some early follows before we have too much content out there. And then the email, not my phone number, but the email, you can email us at awayunplugged@gmail.com.
Ooh, so juicy. So juicy. That's what I'm talking about. You're continuously growing, expanding, exploring, creating what the world needs. Like, this is, amazing. So thank you again, my love. This will not be the last time you're on. I'm literally thinking already of like 6 more episodes we have coming.
I'm here for it all, and I can't wait to deliver.
Woo! Love you.
I love you too. Thank you so much, Jessie.
Thank you.